It's like
Okay.
somebody saying, "Go to Nshiko, go sub money no." So I'm like, is this guy trying to say I'm stupid?
Said I'm writing you this letter and letting you know that my brother, he go better, he done better. Oh, na, 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 na. I'm writing you this letter and letting you know that my sister, he go better, he done better. Oh.
This is episode 3 of the Better Informed Immigrant podcast, where we share information that we hope is of benefit to the African immigrants and the diaspora. Today we have KD, you have Kola, and we also have a guest, I should say pseudo guest, family member slash guest, Deborah, joining us today. And we have a few topics that we're going to be discussing. Before doing that, let me just reach out and see, how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great.
I'm really good. I'm super actually pumped to be in this podcast episode today.
Okay, so you're on episode 3. So I think given that you're setting this precedent, we may need a guest or family member to be part of every third episode going forward. So that's going to be episode 3, 6, 9. We'll bring some special guests. No worries. So we have a few topics we wanted to discuss. I think the first one we're going to dive into is maybe culture shock. The three of us, our situations is a little unique, right? So for me, I came back to the US, but quite frankly, I didn't really remember my time in the US before we went to Nigeria. So it's the same experience of coming back and things being different and not necessarily having a proper understanding of the customs and culture here in the US. For you, Kolade, you were migrating for the first time, and Doing, you also migrated for the first time. So could you give an example of a few things that you maybe, when you were coming, you thought it was going to be like A or B, and then when you arrived, you found out it was C or D. Give us an example of your first experience of a culture shock after arriving in the US.
You know what? I will really have to actually think about mine, because I actually came here in 2003, I believe, and I was really, really young, right? And so I don't really know that I had any particular, hopes actually for the country. But you actually came here at the age of...
Good question.
It's been a while.
He was an old man.
Old. Yeah.
He was an old man, folks.
Well, the one culture shock that I'm still trying to
process still today.
I'm still trying to process and get over is the idea of actually being told that what you're doing doesn't make sense. Because so I guess what happened to me was the first time someone said this to me, I first had to translate it to our language, Yoruba language. It's like somebody saying, "Go to Nshiko, go sub money no." So I'm like, is this guy trying to say I'm stupid? So I'm thinking to myself, and this was I've been in a corporate setting, especially because it was a setting where I was actually the superior. And this person's somebody working under me. I interviewed this guy, and then you're telling me that what I'm saying doesn't make sense. I'm about to fire this guy. It took me a while to start to understand that when people say that, it's not they're trying to say you're stupid.
Yeah.
It's just they're trying to say they're not able to find a good understanding or a sensible way to process what you're maybe saying or doing.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a shock for me. To this day, when I hear it, now I'm used to it, but it still makes me feel somehow.
Yeah.
Because every time I hear that, I have to always adjust myself and adjust what I'm doing, or when I'm trying to rephrase whatever it is I said before that person used the word, to still find a polite way of responding so that it doesn't come across as if I'm fighting back.
Yeah, you're lashing back.
Because it's just unusual. And I don't know what you guys think. The use of that word, it doesn't make sense. Is that normal? Or should we change that lingua?
I don't know. Like, that's a really good point, right? So, I mean, sometimes I feel if somebody said it in isolation, right, it can seem a little bit harsh. I use that word, or that phrase or clause or sentence, a bit when I'm talking to people. Because what I'm really trying to say is I don't see the logic behind what they're saying, right? But
You see,
usually
that's a good way to say it. You don't see the
I
logic.
would,
That's easier
yeah.
to take.
So usually I would have something else to it. I would say something like, it doesn't really make sense to me. Like, what are you trying to communicate here, or something like that, right? So kind of soften the tone a little bit, but I can understand where you're coming from. I think, one thing that you said that I thought was interesting was that you said it was somebody that was working under you, right? So this was somebody that you had authority over in the workplace.
Yeah.
And we have family members that have businesses in Nigeria, or we also have friends, right, that have businesses. And I was just thinking, if somebody in Nigeria who is an employee told their boss, this doesn't make sense, what is, what is the reaction that, what I mean? Like, how would that go? Like, so it's often that, people feel more comfortable and have rights here to be able to say something like that without necessarily fearing repercussions, when that may be a totally different scenario in Nigeria.
You rephrased it somehow that I think maybe if that's the way it's used by everyone, it wouldn't have the kind of effect I felt it does have. You said it doesn't make sense to me. That's easier to like take in than you stop at it doesn't make sense.
What? Well,
Not me, the word me alone, I think it changed the tone and the perception of that sentence right there. Because at least you personalized it. That way, I need to do the job of now saying that thing or planning it or presenting it in a way that it would then make sense to you. Because it does make sense to me.
well, as an actual person who's been here for a while and really like grew up here, okay, so the reality is that really like you two are actually like speaking the same particular language, but you're also not, right? Because you are really like communicating in actually like Nigerian, actually like English. This person's communicating in actually like America's English, right? And so how really like we place particular like meaning to the same actual like sentences then actually like, changes everything for us. And so actually like to me it would not be odd at all, right? Because if it was only me and actually that particular like person and whomever it is like, hey, it actually like doesn't really like make sense, well then there's obviously it's to that person, right? Because it's not like we have other particular people in actually like the room.
But there's
right?
some people who use the same sentence in a group meeting.
Right. And I would say we also have cultural nuances, right? Of kind of like respect and actually like honor that perhaps isn't here in really like the US. And so you were like, oh my gosh, this particular like subordinate who is kind of like disrespecting me, right? But this person is like, honestly, you're really like my coworker. I can probably be really blunt. We have a particular like bluntness here that I don't know would really work very, very well if I traveled back to the homeland of really like Nigeria. I can tell you right now that if I probably traveled over there, I would be kicked out. Like I would probably end up crying because someone would eat me up, really thinking that I was trying to actually like disrespect them when I'm just actually like communicating from the culture that I actually grew up in, right? And so the culture shock is also really trying to actually like comprehend that you all might be really like communicating in the same actual language, but it's also very, very different just because of every actual culture has particular expectations. And that then also has to kind of pass as you two are trying to really communicate, right? And so don't be angry or upset if a person responds in a particular way. And I would encourage the person to pause and to say, hey, this comes off to me as if you were doing this,
Mhm.
but actually, like, what do you mean by that? I think that would help.
So I would add one thing to this, right? You know, the workplace, we can have that conversation and maybe elaborate on it a little bit more. But a different example that popped into my mind recently when Dwayne was speaking was, remember when Dad came over to visit? I think Dad had just finished eating and put the dish in the sink,
Yeah.
right? And Lamide was supposed to be the one to wash the dishes. And I think Lamide turned to Dad and said, "Hey, Dad, you can help too."
Literally died.
You know, and Dad
Died.
was really upset, right? Well, that's kind of what we were talking
Yeah.
about. I think Lamide was actually washing the dishes. That's why she said, "Dad, you can help too," right?
Yeah.
Dad really got upset with her about that.
Yeah.
For the audience, you guys don't know this. One of our siblings was born here in the US and never spent any time in Nigeria, right? So all she knows is here. And to her, she didn't think it was rude to say that, right? But
Right.
to my dad,
Right.
it was extremely rude to have said that.
Mm.
So it goes back to, hey, like there are certain words or combination of words that in one setting, right, it's perfectly justified to say,
Mm.
and in another setting, it's not justified to say, right? And that goes back to what you were talking about, hey, like the Nigeria and America. I would say though that I don't know that I would agree that America is more blunt and direct. I think it's also the same. It's just that the way they do it is different.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting point. So that's what I was thinking when you were speaking a little bit earlier.
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw this out there, and because there's a part of me that just feels that the level of respect that we have, and I don't want to generalize Africa, but I'll just use Nigeria. The level of respect we have over there in comparison to the level of respect here is like night and day.
Mm.
Because like when foreigners from here, like when people from here go to Nigeria and they're communicating with people,
Mm-hmm.
the way people communicate with them has this level of respect that you don't get when you're here. Like we kind of try to respect them even more than our own citizens
Mm-hmm.
when they're in our country.
Mm-hmm.
You could all be working in the same offices.
Mm-hmm.
The way you would tend to think that we're trying to make them feel comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
like in our country. And because of that, when we talk to them, we don't use the words that we use with each other. We try to like be like 100% respectful because we are not only cognizant of the fact that they're like aliens in the country, we are also cognizant of the fact that we want them to not feel disrespected in our country. I don't think we get the same level, like when people here are communicating with us Africans in a corporate setting, we don't get that same level of respect. They just stick to their way of talking. They stick to their culture. They stick to everything that they do. They don't try to consider that maybe it might rub off in a wrong way on this person.
Yeah.
They don't go to that length. And I think it's also this level of superiority that makes you feel like I'm better or we're better or whatever we do here is better than whatever they've done there. So we know better.
Yeah, that's very American. That's
So-
very American.
So
That's,
I think that's like that. There's a gap there that's not really. We haven't closed that gap yet.
Yeah, that's real.
So you bring up some really interesting themes, and I don't know. I guess my thoughts is that maybe some of that, especially how Africans treat foreigners. So when I say foreigners, let's be very specific.
Yeah.
Caucasian foreigners, I should say.
Yeah.
I think some of that may have maybe after effects of colonialism,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because I would argue that it seems to me that, especially in Nigeria, anything Western is considered better than anything indigenous,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and that's, I know that's a topic on its own, and we can dive into it a little bit. But I'm just saying, maybe perhaps one of the reasons why people are very respectful to aliens in the country, and an alien in this case being an immigrant in the country, that's what we're talking about, and Caucasian immigrants specifically, is that I don't see them being as respectful. I don't know this. I've not really had a lot of experience with this, but I don't see them being as respectful to like the Chinese immigrants in the country. You may know a little bit more. I don't, but I'm just making an assumption here that maybe there's some colonialism after effects going on was it not Trump? I may be quoting him wrong, but basically says that the certain countries in Africa were shithole countries, right? Right. I think that's what the media report said. I may have misquoted him there, but like the reality of the situation is, let's be honest, right? Some of the countries in Africa are not necessarily being managed very well, and as a result, they don't necessarily carry as much weight in the world as some of the Western counterparts, right? And there are different reasons for that.
Yeah, I think it goes as far as, so picture a Caucasian on a Lagos road
Yeah.
hawking or selling plantains or plantain
Yeah.
chips or selling something by the roadside. That Caucasian will be respected and spoken to in a respectable manner in comparison to an indigenous like person doing the same exact thing.
I don't know. That's actually, I was thinking that may be a good skit to do an experiment to check that out, right? Um, I don't know.
Because I've seen it because I think also because it's unusual for them to see someone like that doing that, they tend to kind of feel like that person deserves respect
Mm.
because of the color of the skin or the fact that the person is foreign. And that has the level of respect they give to that person. It doesn't make them feel like they're superior to that person. But you flip the story at that point and create that same scenario here, you lose all respect.
Mm.
Like you're working in corporate offices, you don't even get that much respect. Now consider if you're not even as skilled and or educated, that level of respect go further down in how you are. And I'm not generalizing this that everybody does this. I'm just saying like it's something that you experience for the most part.
Right.
So it's again, that was really a big shock for me because it took me a while to adjust. Even like when I see people here talking to maybe their superiors, I'm telling myself I don't think I can talk to my boss that way, but it's all right. I'll keep talking the way I can talk. Like I still don't see myself as in the same level of communication that people are here when they're talking to their superiors.
Interesting.
And we could be in like in a meeting together, and maybe the CEO is in the meeting, and someone else like Caucasian talking to another Caucasian CEO. The way they communicate with each other, to me, doesn't sound respectful. But then I know I can't really communicate that way because in my mind, I'm asking myself, if I say what he's saying, how would this CEO react to me?
Mm. Mm.
I really wouldn't know until I do it, but then I don't feel comfortable like with the idea of even trying.
Yeah.
You know?
So yeah, that's a really good point, right? And maybe you're right. So, I was thinking, let me tell you something, just as an analogy, but it's also a true story, right? So recently I was walking down it was about 8:30, 9 p.m. at night here on the East Coast. And I was taking a walk with a young lady, and we saw this tunnel, right? And I decided, because there's a tunnel in here, I want to walk through the tunnel, right? And as I began to walk through the tunnel, when we got to the entrance of the tunnel, the lady turned to me and said, "Hey, this is male privilege." The point was that, as a young woman, she would not have decided to walk through a tunnel that is in a secluded area at night, right? Because there are specific dangers that she needs to be mindful of that I didn't consider at all when I made that decision to walk through that tunnel, right? So to kind of relate it to the points that you brought up, not to get lost in gender identity and all that kind of stuff, but when people talk about privilege and they talk about like black privilege or white privilege or whatever, right? There are certain things that people can do just because of who you are inherently that it may not necessarily be possible for somebody else to be able to do it. In this case, the example I gave, me being male versus she being female, right? So yes, I mean, maybe that's a little bit there. I would say, though, that the goal should be that we do things that we are comfortable with, number one, but also that we do not feel inferior compared to other people just because of the color of their skin, right?
Yeah.
So that should be the goal, I think. And hopefully, I think as a society, especially in America, right, there's been a history of racism. Well, in my opinion, I think we are slowly and surely moving to a place where we can hopefully say that there's going to be true equality across the spectrum, right? Well, at least it's better than it has been in the past few decades. It's not perfect yet, so it still has areas to improve.
Definitely.
That was perhaps a heavy topic. I'll give you a slighter example that came to mind to me recently. I never really realized this, but I don't know if you guys noticed, but every time you talk to people here in the US and they talk about food, specifically, what are they having for lunch or what are they having for dinner, they always talk in terms of the protein, right? They will say, I'm having tuna for dinner, I'm having chicken for dinner, I'm having fish for dinner, whatever the actual thing is, right? Versus growing up in Nigeria, we talk in terms of the carbohydrates or the starch, right? So if I say, what are you having for dinner? You're probably going to tell me, I'm having bread, I'm having rice, I'm having
That's
beans.
really fascinating. Yeah.
You don't say, I'm having tuna or I'm having salmon, you know what I mean? Right. And I noticed it when I met some people and we started having conversations and they said, what are they having? And when I told them what I was having for dinner, they were all looking at me weird because they said it was sweet potatoes. Right. And they were all looking at me weird, like, so that was something, I mean, that's just a mild example of a culture shock. Like Doyen said earlier, we're speaking the same language, in this case, English, but there is a perspective or a filter that is slightly different. And it was something that occurred to me recently.
Yeah, that's good.
I think
the food conversation, I think it's just the level or the depth that we go to here when we try to analyze what we're eating. Like in Nigeria, we don't do that. We don't even care. We just want to eat good food. That's all we know.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're trying to analyze how much protein do I have in this food, how much carbohydrate.
Exactly.
Analyze how much roundabout and liver and more I have in my soup. Make it interesting to eat. Who cares about the protein level?
Actually, like the calorie count is very, very important here. Yeah.
We just want to eat good food.
Yeah. No, well, we want to eat something that is flavorful, I should say, not necessarily good. Sometimes it's not good.
If it is flavorful, it is good. What else is there?
It's completely okay if you actually like die early, as long as it was flavorful. Actually, you're fine.
Actually, that's a concept, right? If I'm going to die early, I don't know, eat all the good foods. Like don't go and eat just too healthy and you're not eating good food and you end up dying early. Like you lose both ways.
Yeah.
That's good.
So let me ask you guys a different question. What are some of the things you miss in this case about Nigeria, and why?
The food.
The food. Clarify that.
Like I'm going to Nigeria next week, right? I'm already daydreaming about the kind of good food I'm going to eat.
What good food are you going to eat? Tell me about the food.
I miss some Igbo soup. All those draw that they put their ugu inside.
Okay.
Isewu, like all the plethora of like options that we have over there that we don't have here. I'm daydreaming. It's not going to last. It's just going to be 2 weeks, but it'll be like a very good 2 weeks of like touching base with the roots, That I would say would be number one for me. And number two would be the kind of freedom we have to be entrepreneurs over there in comparison to like the freedom that we have here. Over there, if you have the money, you can try pretty much anything as an entrepreneur. Over here, you have to think twice before you jump into it because it's not always a cheap venture for the most part. Outside of maybe some technology thing that you could do without spending too much money, most things that would have to do with products, you have to count the cost before like diving into it. That's I would say the two major things that I miss the most.
So I don't know if that last part, I think I want to explore that a little bit more because I don't know if I agree with you there in the sense that there's more flexibility in being an entrepreneur in Nigeria compared to being an entrepreneur here in the US. I think that the entrepreneur or the market in the US is more informed such that you have to do some analysis as you are considering different options. versus the entrepreneur in Nigeria. In my opinion, some of them are not very informed and they just try different things without necessarily doing the analysis beforehand.
Because it's cheaper to try.
You think it's cheaper to try? I think it's more expensive to try.
It is cheaper. Okay, I'll give you an example. If I want to go into, I'm not going to use the word supermarket, but if I want to go into selling groceries, right?
Yep.
It would cost me less to buy a couple of groceries and just put it in front of my house, even as a tenant. I don't own the house. I'm just going to put it out there and I can test it and see if people are buying on like just in the streets because I have proximity. I can't do that here. The police would park their car right in front of the tomato. Again, that's my perception.
Is that true that you can? I think you can do that there. You just need to make sure it's properly registered and everything.
You're talking about here?
Yeah, I think you might be able to do it here. You just need to make sure it's properly registered.
Exactly. You said properly registered. I don't need registration in Nigeria. I don't need to find trade.
No, so it really isn't about actually like the cost. I think it's about actually like the legality. Like, I think that's really what it is.
It's because the cost of legality here.
Okay, so you have a business here in the US, right? Did you register your business yourself?
Yes.
Okay, so like it was not difficult for you to do that, right?
It wasn't. It wasn't difficult to register.
I think okay, so maybe for that example that you talked about, maybe you are right in the sense that perhaps there's little to no barrier to entry in Nigeria compared to over here. But I would say also that when you actually start building something that's maybe scalable or meaningful. When I mean meaningful, I mean not the mom and pop shop in your bedroom or in your house. I mean more like the supermarket on the street corner kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You're going to jump through so many hoops in Nigeria that you don't even know of just to make it happen, compared to over here where everything is well defined. You know exactly what you need to do before you go do it. Mm-hmm. And there is no situation where you open up your store and then 2 weeks later, NAFDAQ shows up.
I guess a way of differentiating could be it's easier to set up a sustainable business here than it is to do in Nigeria, because if you go cheap in Nigeria, you might be setting up something that would get shut down in a week or two. Mm-hmm. Whereas here, you at least would have all the information at your disposal before getting into it that would help you build a sustainable business. Now, how you grow it to be sustainable, that's still up to you, but at least you have all the systems in place as opposed to us. But I think we don't care about sustainability as much as we do over here. We just care that if it pays the bills, let's just do it. And if it shuts down a month or a year after or 2 years after, they'll jump into something else again because of the ease of being able to jump into several things over there without even having to count the cost. Just like if you talk to, and I don't want to generalize this again, the average citizen over there, they probably have tried 10 different businesses. The entrepreneurs.
They have the entrepreneurial spirit, yes. But I mean, what's the point of trying 10 different businesses that all failed? The whole point of a business is to make money, right? So if all of them are failing, what's the point?
Well, that's the perception we have to change. Over there, the whole point of business is to survive. If you help me go through year 1, year 2, I'm okay with it. I'll do another one, year 3. As long as I can still survive every year. And I think the way we process it is the economy is affecting my business. So let me go try another one.
Okay.
We don't focus too much on what we're doing wrong because we kind of feel like the economy has this upper end that sometimes it doesn't matter what you do right. The economy is still going to play a bigger role in how you grow the business. So when it does fail, we jump into something. And I'll give you an example, which we can segue to Nigeria conversation a bit there. We were like a poultry business. We started with like birds, and then the economy really affected how much it's costing us to buy the feeds for the birds. Because of that, we sold all our birds. Back to square one. Now we have pigs, because at least the market still there's an advantage to piggery from a cost standpoint. And again, we don't even know how well that we do yet until we start to sell, depending on what prices we're able to sell. Again, we're able to like flip it. No regulation, like our farm, we don't have to go through any certification. Maybe when we grow bigger at some point, the government might require some things from us. But right now, we could just do whatever we want. And for us, it's pretty much if it gets us from point A to point B, that's fine. If we have to change, we'll change down the road. So I think that's one of those benefits you get for being in Nigeria compared to here.
Okay. Yeah, okay. There's that maverick spirit is what you're saying, right? Try different things out, see which one sticks, and if it sticks, then continue doing it until something happens, and then adapt as you need to make it work.
Yeah.
Oh,
Before Nigeria happens.
before that, Deborah, what are some of the things that you miss about Nigeria, if anything at all?
Actually, like once more, I just want to be careful, taking into account that I came here very early on because I'm always really like cautious about someone really like going online and really like finding out that I came here super young. It's like, whatever. But I really think that the thing that I really do miss is that really being the majority, right? I think that the blessing of being here in the US is really like diversity and color and all of those things. But then I have really like lived in particular places where Black people were not like the majority, and even less so really like Nigerians, right? And so having to kind of explain particular things, that even I didn't know because I've been really like away from Nigeria for so long. But I really think that even in terms of the things that you have, either like being able to purchase, I don't know, probably like hair and or really like particular actual like foods would not be so hard, for me in Nigeria because I am actually like the majority, right? And so all of us actually like do our hair really like the same way, or we eat kind of like the same food, and it really like wouldn't cost me more to just have the things that I use every day compared to over here where majority doesn't particularly look like me. And I will be careful here. I'm not complaining. I'm just actually like saying these are the things that I think I oftentimes really like realize, right? Where it costs me more to actually buy the things that I really like or the things that really like apply to me. And so that is, I don't know, if I am trying to purchase kind of, I don't know, a particular headpiece or really like weave or actual braids, I have to go and pay more. Or if I'm trying to purchase shea butter, right? And I really believe that that's great for actually my skin. I have to pay more compared to if I was not, Black or Nigerian. It's easier to find creams and lotions really like made for me or at my skin type, right? And so I really miss the actual benefits of, being kind of like the majority. I feel like it's a little bit cheaper. I feel like it's a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It makes sense. I don't know that I can connect to some of the things you said because I think obviously I'm a guy and I don't necessarily use some of these products that you talked about. So I understand where you're coming from mentally, but not necessarily. I don't understand the emotional pain points in those things. One thing I miss, I would say, is amala tabula from Oyo. I just miss that dish. When I was younger, we would go to those places. It was a treat to go to those places to go eat good amala tabula. Like Kolade was saying earlier, that's not something that's necessarily very available here. So I may need to go take a look, and I'm a cheapskate anyway. So if I went to like an African restaurant, I'll be looking at it like, wait, what is this price?
Yeah.
For the same thing. Like, so
Okay, this is just crazy because literally I'm over here with actually like two guys and their priorities is we missed the food. Like that's what's so important to them.
The other thing I would say is, so when I was younger, during like New Year's or the holidays, especially it was during like Christmas and New Year time, right? We lived in Gowan Estate at the time, right? All the kids would get together in our part of the estate, and you just go to each other's houses. You just go to random houses
Yeah.
within that section of the estate, and everybody would open up the doors for the kids of the neighborhood. They would serve you food and stuff. You would just basically go from house to house eating different people's food, right? I don't know, I was a kid, so I don't really know how it looked from the adult's perspective, but it just seems, there was this sense of community that
Yeah.
existed that I absolutely loved and stuff. I
Yeah.
don't know that it's still the same now. I think it's changing, since I had, so obviously people are not able to do some of those things anymore.
Mm.
And I also don't know that a sense of community, is the same. I think there's still some community, but it's not the same as it was when I was growing up. But having lived on the East Coast for quite a while, right? I lived in a place for like, I think like 10, 11 years. And apart from saying hello to my neighbor, how's the weather today? I don't think I spoke to my next door neighbor past those two things. So,
Yeah.
that sense of community is not the same as it was as I was growing up. And that's something that I definitely miss.
Yeah. There's some parts of Nigeria that still do that. I think it always depends on the average household income for the area. So if it's more like lower class citizens, they tend to build a community quickly because that's how to survive.
Mm.
So everybody try to share with each other.
Yeah, that's good.
But in like the upper class, they tend to try to create this kind of scenario that we have here, where they are already like a gated community. Each house has its own gates. You can't just like walk or miss your turn in and just go into someone's compound. But the other like mostly lower class, I don't want to use the word ghetto areas,
The hood.
the hood, and people like kind of mingle easily over there. Because they do like it's your turn, it's my turn. You feed us this morning, we'll feed you, we'll feed you at night. By night time, my husband will be back. He will bring money,
Yeah.
and they do that get along also.
Yeah. And to clarify, when we talk about lower class or higher class, what we're really talking about is really just the amount of income that the family brings in, right? So
The socio-economic
it's
class.
really social and economic class. Thank you for clarifying that. So KD, like you've mentioned already that you're heading to Nigeria. Tell us a little bit about what your plans are for this Nigeria trip, apart from going there to go waste all of your money.
It's money well spent because when you spend money on things that you only enjoy for like 2 weeks, it's still good. Because you don't know the next time you'll be traveling to go enjoy those things. But the business of the trip really, number one, again, will be the farm, because we recently switched or pivot from being a bird farm to a pig farm. So we're going to kind of analyze the situation over there and see what our chances are to actually scale that business. And then maybe start to figure out the things that we have to do to reduce costs and make more profit down the road. We do have 20 pigs now, two currently heavily pregnant. And ideally, each one should give you between at least minimum of 5, and it could even go up to 10 babies. Now, I'm not using the right terms to identify these pigs because I'm only on the business side. I don't know all the details.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a boa and there's a hybrid, there's pure breed. They have ways of identifying them. But the idea is just to kind of see what that would look like, because we have a 6-month projection to grow the pigs to where we can actually sell, and also cross them to where they can reproduce before we start selling. So those are like the two milestones that we have to reach before we can start to monetize. So I'll be going to review that, and at the same time, we're also still considering how we can restart the bird business in a small scale, considering because the cost of feeding them has tripled in the last 1 year. So it's currently not viable to buy birds for egg production. So we consider buying birds for meat production as well. So those are the things I'll basically be reviewing when I get to Nigeria. And then the second major business is the event management company, CoverMe.ng. We haven't had the level of success we had our first 3 years in terms of the number of events we're able to cover. But we do have like a rental business as part of the event management company, which is still consistent and at least generates revenue. So I'll
When
be
you
looking
say
at, you said?
when you say rental business, could you elaborate on what you guys are letting
Oh,
people?
yes. It's an equipment rental business. So the same equipments that we would use to really cover events are also equipments that we get the chance to rent out to people who does have events. And sometimes we'll rent out to like contractors that we've used for our own events that we covered, who might have their own event that they have clients that they want to cover and they'll rent from us. So that at least is still ongoing, and it's the one successful part of the business that we have currently. But the
So
event management pays
when you say rental, we're talking about like
equipment.
multimedia equipment rental, so that like video cameras, microphones, anything that is used for the multimedia
Of
space, whether it's video, audio,
audio.
photo, whatever medium it is.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that to be specific. Yes, it will be audio, video, equipment for rental. And those are also the things that we provide when we cover events, even though we are involved in event planning as part of our services. But for the most part, we cover the media aspect of events, either it's personal or corporate. So yeah, I'll be reviewing that as well. And the last item is just going to check a portion of land that we are contemplating using for farming, cassava and plantains to start. Yeah, just to kind of review that as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
all
it's
that is
cool that you're
too.
willing to like try different things, right? Like, you tried the poultry business.
Yeah.
There were some economic situations that developed, and you're making an
Mhm.
adjustment to go to the piggery, and then from there, yeah, you also had a lot of experience with like the event management and video equipment rental kind of business as well. So it's pretty cool that you are doing those different things. And it seems as if this trip is going to be to kind of number one for the businesses that are like stagnating, right?
Mhm.
From the initial progress, you're trying to go back and see how you can revitalize them. But
Yeah,
also like you're also going to go get like for the new business, the piggery business, you're trying to get more information so you can start doing some of the business assessments and see how you can make some adjustments to make it even more profitable.
correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. When is Cover Me going to sponsor us? Cover Me event management. When are they going to sponsor us? Let's have this conversation.
Yeah, all it takes is maybe once we can get a couple of clients for covering their events yearly, we'll have the kind of money.
Ah,
By the time you convert it to dollars, it would be worth sponsorship.
well, okay. We have an audience of one so far, but our audience is growing significantly. We can promote you to our audience.
And your audience are in America too. We need to
Yeah,
find
I mean, those are the clients you want, right? You want Western clients that are going to Nigeria to go do events, and you need people to help them with that part of the business, right? Is that not what you're looking for?
definitely. I think you're right. Those probably would be clients that would not do too much negotiation when they have to pay us compared to the ones that we have now.
You don't want so much negotiation. That's so funny.
Because they will not price it like it's a tomato that they're trying to buy at the marketplace. Even here, we don't price tomato. You just go to the shelf, pick it up.
Oh Lord.
Over there, we price everything.
Okay.
So it'll be nice. But I think you're right though. The idea of tapping clients from here who might be having events over there, it's a good avenue that I don't think we've even considered at all.
So if people want to find out about your business, I think you mentioned the website earlier, coverme.ng. Is that still active?
Yes, coverme.ng.
And all the contact information is there?
Yes, and all still active.
Okay, great. That'll be fantastic. Hopefully, through this, folks will reach out to you to inquire about the services. And if they decide to become a client, hopefully you would spend some of the money to pay tax to this organization for as sponsorship.
Yeah, because now that you mentioned it, whenever we get clients, we'll ask them, how did you hear about us? Is it true the better informed immigrants? Because we owe them commission.
No, so let's kind of wrap up for today. Like anything else, any last minute things that people would like to bring up for today?
Not really. I just want to put it out there. If anyone knows, well, I guess before I go on the trip, if it's possible to get as much information, if anyone knows like you can't miss spot for good food, you can add it to the comment section.
Have your best recommendation for food in Lagos?
Yeah. In Lagos specifically.
Okay. In Lagos specifically, in the comment section, so that Kola can go check it out.
Even though I won't mind if it's outside of Lagos, I can make the trip. If it's one of a kind, not like something I could have gotten in Lagos, you know.
Okay. Oh, all right, go to that.
I'll find a business to go to in that state so I can get the chance to get the food.
Okay. Madam Doyin, any last minute things from you?
She poofed.
Oh, she's gone. True Nigerian. She just disappeared without announcing.
I'm running you